have this meeting. We're joined by former official in the United States Trade Representative Office, Steve Gill. Thanks for joining us, Steve, from Nashville.
Thanks, Scotty.
Okay, so as an onlooker into these tense negotiations, and have been for a while, between China and the U.S. over trade, where are we in this process? You know, we had a dinner, now we don't have a dinner. Are we just going to end up having tea somewhere halfway in the middle of the world and solve this problem?
I hope they're focused on the real details rather than whether to serve Chick-fil-A or McDonald's at that meal. I think what we're seeing here is that the Chinese and the U.S. are really into the difficult parts of the negotiation. I mean, I think the easy stuff, if it's easy, is how many goods, how many agricultural products shift from country to country. And I think they've pretty much addressed that. They've made a lot of progress on other issues, but you still have very difficult and complicated issues like currency transfers. It does seem like the Chinese are now putting that on the table and making some movement. Intellectual property protection, that has always been the big deal that the United States is wanting to get out of this. And the other, perhaps most complicated, is how do you address the fact that Chinese companies, many of which are directed or controlled by the Chinese government, are engaged, or at least allegedly engaged, in espionage in China with U.S. companies doing business there, and in some cases perhaps here in the United States. Those are difficult issues, and I think that the sense was they were making progress on kind of the big stuff. And when it got into these complicated issues, they've fallen just a little bit short. It does sound like, if you listen to the president's advisors, that they are continuing to make progress, and they are very bullish on a deal that will at least move on these issues that are the tough ones, and will continue to negotiate them after we get this big trade deal.
But it's interesting, Steve, you bring it up, listen to the president's advisors. I feel like sometimes I'm listening to two different groups here. The president said he was not going to go to China unless there was a deal on the table. He wasn't going to meet and sign a deal with Xi Jinping unless he met with him personally. Now you have Xi Jinping saying, well, after North Korea, unless there is an actual deal, I'm not going to come to Mar-a-Lago or anywhere else unless there's actually a deal already worked out. So can these two actually get together, or the people that are they actually trusting the people who are negotiating this deal, or is it better for the both of them to get in the room and work it out themselves and sign the deal right then and there without everybody else's involvement?
I think there's a lot of show going on here. The second tier of advisors on both the U.S. and China side are working extra hours, seem to be making progress, and we're hearing very optimistic things from both the U.S. negotiators and the Chinese negotiators. I think you're seeing some posturing both with President Trump and with President Xi. I think, again, as I've said for a while, we will get a deal. It will not solve everything in terms of the conflict over trade and other issues, but I think it will solve most of them and still leave some that have been intractable for a long time. Again, intellectual property and some of the espionage issues still there to be worked out in more details. But when you're making progress in the right direction, sometimes it's good to take the deal and then keep negotiating.
That's the art of the deal. Okay, but the problem is we also have a trade deficit has reached its highest number in history. So do you think Trump is starting to feel the pressure to secure a deal, even if it isn't necessarily 100% advantageous to the United States? Or is he going, you know what, I still have 2 years. I'm gonna hold off until I can actually get the deal, saying this is my last chance to ever make a deal for the United States as the president of the United States?
No, I think this president has shown he will walk away from a bad deal. He showed that in North Korea. I think that was intended in part to send a message to China that if we don't have a good deal for us and a good deal for you, I'll walk from the deal. So I think he was sending a loud message there as well, that he's not going to just take anything that gets thrown on the table. I do think that the U.S. sees, and I think it's reality, that the Chinese economy is slowing. They're feeling more pressure from their economy slowing, I think, than the U.S. feeling pressure because of this large trade deficit. We've had a large trade deficit for quite some time, and I think the pressure is probably more on them than it is on us as these negotiations move into what I believe will probably be the final few weeks.
Well, let's hope it's just the final few weeks, because we have other things we have to tend to, like North Korea and every other issue that's coming out of the Asia-Pacific atmosphere and theater. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Thanks, Scotty.